All right, in this little segment, I wanted to talk about consistency and break down what consistency actually means in dog training and how it can benefit you and how the absence of it could really tamper your training, could really mess up your training. It could really stall your progress and even send you backwards completely. So consistency is something very overlooked. And all that means, all consistency boils down to is having a set of rules and never changing those rules. Making those rules a very strong habit for you to follow. And doing that, you make it very clear for your dog to understand. For instance, if you're teaching something new as, a sit, for instance, right? And you break it down into segments where you go, okay, I'm going to teach you how to sit, so first I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's say I'm going to lure the dog into a sit. So what I do with consistency is I come up with a set of rules and I go, I'm going to lure, from nose level, raise the lure up a little bit until the butt hits the ground. As soon as your butt hits the ground, I'm going to reward you. And I'm going to do that every single time for a certain period of time. That right there is consistency. Lack of consistency would be sometimes I lure the dog, sometimes, I don't lure him that much. Sometimes I use leash pressure without teaching him how to do it, how to cope with leash pressure, and sometimes I lure, sometimes I do both. Sometimes I'd fake that I have a food in my hand. Sometimes I don't lure him at all. Sometimes I just say sit, even though he doesn't know what it means. So that lack of consistency can be very confusing to your dog. A lack of consistency could make it so that I get angry with my dog. It can make it so that, I get frustrated and the dog gets frustrated. Right, so then I go from, luring to then eventually I can start teaching him leash pressure, if that's the route I wanted to go. So obviously I'm not just going to correct the dog into a sit. I'm going to show him how to cope with leash pressure by using maybe a little bit of leash pressure, a little bit of molding, and maybe a lure as well. So then I teach him how to do that over and over again. Again, not changing the rules, being very consistent, and then sticking to that. Then I can move on to, now I'm going to, now that you know how to sit, now you know how to cope with leash pressure. Now we're going to make it more dependable. And when you don't sit, there's leash pressure now. When you do sit, there is a reward. So by me constantly being consistent with those rules, it makes it more likely for my dog to be successful. And that's just one little example of consistency. I could have a dog that is very well trained, knows how to sit down, heel, recall, etc. Even tricks. I could do tricks, right? But by me doing a bunch of, repetitions and being very clear and having a very specific set of rules, making it very black and white, very, very easy to understand. That is what consistency means to your dog. It's predictability when it comes to those rules. That lack of predictability, that lack of consistency is what makes learning very, very difficult. Now, I'm not talking about predictability necessarily in in every aspect. Sometimes too much predictability can be a bad thing. But in terms of learning and being consistent with certain habits, that is where consistency is going to save the day.